So December 16th, 2022, I get a call at 1 p.m. PST from Victim Services. Sitting in my room, she goes, that ripped me to pieces.
You were the complainant on an attempted murder, intimate partner violence case. It was truly horrific.
Yeah, I was the most willing witness on the face of the earth. He took everything from me.
What did you want to have happen out of the system? Welcome back to another episode of Who Judges the Judge, the podcast intended to make you question the way you judge the world around you. Today's guest is Cait Alexander. I am so excited to interview her. She is an absolute powerhouse of a human. She is a creative, an actress, not an activist, but we're going to talk about why she's not an activist. And the founder of an organization called EVE, which stands for End Violence Everywhere. It is an organization that is trying to not only assist survivors of domestic violence, but actually change the laws that govern the way that the criminal justice system deals with domestic violence incidences here in Canada. Cait, I'm so happy to have you on this podcast. Honestly, I feel like we should just be taking our WhatsApp text messages and creating like a script of them, and that's the podcast, because we've had so many in-depth conversations about what is happening in our system. I want to start with my intro, really. An activist, but not an activist, but an activist, because as we were getting started here, I asked about the monikers you use to self-describe. And, activism, and I use that in quotes, entails standing up against a particular system and trying to advocate for change. And you are most certainly an advocate for change. Tell me why you do not subscribe to the label of activist.
I don't know if there's a particular logical reason. It just feels icky. It doesn't sound. It's something I've never just self-described as, and I think you said it in your statement. It's about advocating for something that's better.
Right.
Activism has this. You're fighting the systems that be, but I think I don't like people that complain. Like, I really don't. If you're going to...
Which is so interesting.
Can I swear?
You can do whatever you want.
If you're going to bitch and moan about things, you best have a solution. And so I've seen activism, or the cultural connotation of it, be... Okay, we don't like this, but we're not actually willing to provide an ulterior or something that we can fill the space with or change. We don't actually know how to change it, but we're just mad at it. And I think that that's useless, and I think that perpetuates problems, actually. So I think advocating has a richer meaning insofar that you are advocating for something and you might actually have a better solution that can be implemented. And I think that's probably why I don't even like the labels. I don't like any. I don't know. It's such a weird thing, because we were talking about this earlier. Culturally, we have these brush strokes of things. Okay, you're a liberal. Okay, you're a conservative. Okay, the system is broken. But what do these things actually mean when we break them down? And because of the social media world, which for better or for worse, it's here, we can't change it. So we have to figure out how to use it intelligently. And I don't like labels other than brands.
It's fair.
Other than fashion.
That's totally fair. And, I think that's something that I've talked about more and more lately. A lot of people want to know what side of a particular issue I stand. And the reality is, I think that the fact we have two completely divided sides to any issue is the start of the problem. And I think that we as a society need to be able to have conversations standing from different viewpoints, bringing in different perspectives, and figuring out, on the Venn diagram where the commonality is. And let's start finding solutions that start with, that common ground. Because if we don't do that, we're always just going to be standing on opposite sides of the same coin.
And
trying to
screaming
figure
at
it
each
out.
other and
Yes.
just going into
Yes.
this vacuum.
Yes.
And that's actually, I think, a good overview of where we're at culturally right now, which is very sad.
Yes. So we got to change that. So criminal defense lawyer. And speaking of labels I hate, survivor of domestic violence. I hate the label survivor as much as I hate the label victim. But that's just me standing on this side. You and I met because you were, as labels would have it, a complainant on a domestic violence case that had been stayed as a result of the delays caused by the prosecution, taking too long to prosecute the case. And you called me. I was not connected to the case, for anyone listening. I had nothing to do with the situation. I had nothing to do with the accused. I had not met you before. You and I connected over social media because you wanted answers and you could not understand how this had happened. So let's break down a little bit about what, and I don't want to dwell in what the situation was for you because you've come so much farther than what occurred. But you were the complainant on an attempted murder, intimate partner violence case that was truly horrific.
Yeah.
When did those charges arise? When did that happen?
July 31st, 2021, my life was nearly taken by my ex-partner. He nearly beat me to death with a wooden rolling pin in his fists, and all 6'3" of him, 220 pounds, whatever he was, because he couldn't find his car keys at a house in Leaside here in Toronto, and blood all over the walls. It was a four-ish hour situation that I could not escape.
And you caught part of it, at least part of it, on video.
There's a lot of footage. I have 40 plus photos and videos of him beating me, the scene, him destroying my things. I have the most evidence out of, it's a pretty open shut case, I would suppose.
And if I remember correctly, you were able to sort of send those videos to someone on your contact list who then called the police, and actually the police arrived and essentially saved you.
Yeah, I'm alive because of a director friend of mine who just happened to be so. To set the scene a little bit, Saturday, July 31st, I'd been shooting a movie in Barrie. I came home at around 8 o'clock in the morning. We were on nights that morning, and I came back, and I was exhausted. I'd been working nights, and I could just tell something was off. I woke up, made him lunch because that was my relational duty, and no matter how tired I was, and I took a picture of the lunch for some reason. And then within about 2 hours after that, he got very upset because he could not find his car keys. And I did not know where they were. And he then tried to burn my handbags on the stove. So he lit up.
What kind of handbags?
Girl.
My heart just said.
Yeah. Thank you. Those kind of handbags.
Okay.
You're probably wearing one of the yeah.
Okay.
We're probably wearing no. And I got angry as
Yes.
your yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, not
Yeah,
angry
yeah.
like that. Angry like, what the fuck are you doing?
Yeah, I get it.
And it was all coercive control tactics, right? That was all just to get escalated. And then he ended up hitting me in the face, and then it just turned into absolute terror. He corralled me to the upstairs part of the house in the primary bedroom and just relentlessly for hours just beat on me. Like I couldn't, there's no reason why other than he got pleasure out of it. And
this wasn't the first time. This was a repeated pattern, but this was the worst.
It's a 7-month relationship. So about January 2021 to July, early August 2021, he had slapped me and, put my head into a driver's side of a door, those type of things. And I was trying to leave the relationship. This is what people need to understand is I was on my way out, and that's why he escalated so much.
Okay.
Because I did not want to be there anymore, and I knew it was unsafe, but that was my house. I lived there. That was my address, and I was figuring out the pieces with my mom and my family about, okay, this is not a good situation and I need to get out of this. And he picked up on that. And that's something that needs to be understood, because everyone asks that stupid question, well, why didn't she leave?
Yes.
I didn't leave. Most survivors don't leave because, well, we'll use the term survivor. I know we're both
You
not huge.
you lose whatever. I'm not gonna ever correct someone.
No,
You're a
but I
guest
don't
on
know I
my-
don't like victim. Most
You know,
people,
I don't like Survivor. I don't like Survivor because if you look up the definition of Survivor, all it means is to live through something that should have killed you. It's so basic. And I
Yeah.
think for people who have truly overcome situations of extreme trauma, to say you're a survivor, like that's like step one. Like the next day when you woke up and you were still alive, you were a survivor. And where you've come today is so much farther beyond that.
Yeah.
So I hate the term survivor, but I want you obviously use whatever you're comfortable with. That's just my
for a lack of a better
Yeah.
for lack of a better term, we'll say that now until we can find, because but the word that, like, people say, oh, I'm a thriver now too, and
that's just cheesy.
sounds like Crayola. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm like maybe I get images of like, what are we, kindergartens? So I sent a 2-word WhatsApp message to the first conversation at 6:09 p.m. that night, and there was already blood on the walls, and and that director friend of mine who I hadn't seen, it was COVID, I hadn't seen him in a decade, and I just said, please help.
Wow.
And he believed me, and that's why I'm alive. I didn't call the police. The whatever he orchestrated, he managed to get a hold of my agents who had my address, and they ended up calling the police.
Why didn't you call the police? Why didn't you hit 911?
My ex took my phone,
Okay.
and I was listening for him. He would go downstairs momentarily, and I would send a message or whatever.
Were you like on a computer or on like
a computer?
iPad?
He took my phone.
Oh.
He'd take my phone. Yeah.
Okay.
So, the reason why I was also terrified to call the police. I don't know if you can call police on WhatsApp through the phone. I have no idea. I actually don't know how to do that. But he was threatening to kill me and my family, and I had every reason to believe him because my head was split open in 3 places, and it was incredibly dangerous. And there's that. It got so bad to the point where I had to let him do what he was doing because fighting him back was futile. So I had to let him, and that's why I'm alive. I'm alive because I eventually gave up.
Wow. And so the police show up, and you're obviously horrifically injured.
Yeah.
And he's arrested
He
immediately.
went on the run. He went out and took the dog for a walk like a normal psychopath does at 8:30, because the dog had to be walked at a certain time every day, and he went out and completed that task covered in my blood.
Wow. And so the police show up, and he's out walking the dog?
Yeah. And then he saw them on the Ring camera and then started threatening me, which is why he got an obstruction of justice charge, because he started threatening me saying, I'm going to kill you. Don't let the police in. So I saw that through my computer.
Right.
And I've seen the body cam footage. And for about 45 minutes to an hour, I did not let them in. I'm alive because the neighbors told the police I was in the house.
Wow.
And then I remember I was just too confused and too petrified. I obviously had major concussion. Like, it was just utter chaos. And I just remember the lights, the blue and the red lights just echoing on the walls of the hall. And I'm just sitting there like covered in my, a pink house coat, just completely torn to shreds. And the police kept knocking and knocking and knocking and knocking. And then one male officer, actually, and I've seen it on the body cam footage, actually, the female officer was like, well, she knows we're here. We're the police. If she wants help, I'm sick and tired of this. I'm on my way out. And it was actually the male officer that said, no, we can't leave her. And like, we don't know if he's in there, we don't know what's going on. And I made him go around to the side door so that my ex couldn't hear it all on the Ring camera. And
how'd you get him his attention?
I just said, I screamed
like from the window?
Yeah. And I just screamed at them and I just said, go to the side. And then I still didn't let them in. And I was just yelling at everybody. And the officer, I opened the door a little bit and he stuck his boot in. I said, no, you can't come any further. Then the SWAT team was called because I thought it was a hostage situation.
Right.
And, but actually it's kind of comical. What actually got me to open the door eventually was when the SWAT team came and they said, we're going to break every single door down and barge our way. And I'm like, I'm going to get sued. That was the logic and reasoning. And I'm just trying to give the context of what the nothing makes sense.
Right.
Your entire world is completely shattered and you're just survival mode is an involuntary experience for everyone. And that needs to be understood by the injustice system better. But yeah, my logic and reasoning was like, he's going to sue me. And
for the broken doors.
Yeah, that's what I was worried about.
Okay.
And that's why I said, fine. And then in barged 7 dudes with giant guns and a ladder and all that. And I was like, and that just absolute hysteria. Absolute hysteria. Because now not only was I just nearly beaten into the ground, and I'm talking like over and over, like your head just ricocheting to the floor, and he's just on top of you. He gouged my eyes out with his thumbs, like sick and twisted. And that was that masculine energy, and then in come 7 dudes, and I'm like, I wouldn't talk to anybody, but they could see it all. He was instantly charged, and I refused medical attention because I was still conscious, and because they wouldn't send a female in, and I refused to talk to a man, and that's something that needs to be worked on, right? But yeah, my ex went on the run for 2 or 3 days. And it was a long weekend, and he knew that if he turned himself in on the Sunday, he'd be held until Tuesday. So he turned himself in on he's obviously a criminal. He obviously knows these things because I wouldn't think about these things.
So he turned himself in on the Tuesday morning and was
was
out on Wednesday?
Yeah. He was out on Monday. No, I think he put himself in on the Monday, was out on Tuesday.
Okay.
And I went down to the Ritz and just couldn't tell my parents for 4 or 5 days.
So that was July 2020. So he gets charged, call it, August 1st, 2021.
Yeah.
Case winds its way through the justice system. You call it the injustice system. I like that. And then ultimately, because a lot of people don't understand what's happening in our system, what happens?
So beginning of August, there was a restraining order. I ended up at my parents' house eventually. And how lucky am I? There's so many people who go through that who don't have parents to pick them up covered in blood still. I ended up back in the hospital. I'd already spent 24 hours at Sunnybrook. Ended up back in the hospital because my head wounds weren't closing up properly. And then we call him shithead, to be honest with you. That's his moniker. Yeah, that's what my family calls him. But he was obviously out on bail because it's Canada. It was like $500 or something. And he stayed away from me for a little bit. I went in and then gave a formal statement when I was physically able to come back into the city, and he was charged increase of charges, and he's got 5 at that stage.
And is it for other domestic assault?
No,
within
this was
the
for that night. Just that night.
Oh, just on that night. Okay.
Yeah, they increased his charges because they laid the original 3 as soon as they got it because they could see it, but
Right.
I had not given a formal statement.
Okay, and so they give the formal statement, and they add
and then they
charges.
added to it.
Okay,
yeah, and then I was August 30th, 2021, and I was in Yorkville at Cafe Nervosa, and my ex has a very distinct Mercedes, and he just kept circling around and around, and that was the decision. It's like, I'm out of here. I'm done. I'm done with this country. This is it. I can't live in the city anymore. Vancouver's not far enough away. Where do I go? And I just called my agents and I said, I'm going to California. Let's press this visa through and I'm done.
right.
And that was it. Never looked back.
Ultimately, what happens with the case, and more importantly, how are you told about what happens with the case?
So additionally, it was very serious, very serious. I call it intimate partner violence, domestic violence, whatever, very, very serious case. And it was treated as such in the TPS Toronto Police Services did a the best that they could. They missed a couple things. They missed a couple charges as far as I was concerned, confinement and things like that. But the police were very understanding, and so I didn't have a negative experience there. I assumed naively, I've never really been. I mean, I had another criminal case go through. Which was a hot mess, but I assumed this was so obvious. I had so much evidence. Why would I ever? Nothing would. We're going to trial and we're going to move on from this, right? Or whatever. That's a very light way of where to describe my mental state at the time. But
what did you want to have happen with the case? Because I've criminal defense lawyer. I've defended my share of men charged with domestic violence. There are some scenarios in which I get calls from the girlfriend, the wife, whatever the situation is, and they say they didn't want their partner to be charged. They don't want their partner to be convicted. He can't go to jail. This is a big misunderstanding. And then, of course, there's other women that just want him sentenced to life in jail. And so what did you want to have happen out of the system?
He took everything from me. I lost my house, my stepson, my dog, my relationships, my life perspective, and nearly my life, and then our relationship in 24 hours. I wanted him held accountable for that 150%. I was the most willing witness on the face of the earth. As soon as I was able to get out of Toronto, the perspective started to shift. I was like, okay, we have to go through with it. He's dangerous. This is a dangerous human being. He will do this again. I worried about his kid. That was the hardest part. So I stayed. The hardest part to this day is his son.
Like what you gave
Leaving.
Up of everything
I didn't
you
get to
gave
say
up.
goodbye.
Wow.
That was the glue for me even being there anymore. And that ripped me to pieces. And I would get texts from his son even after all of it happened and I was in my parents' house and he'd say, okay, love you, good night. He had no idea. And it just haunted me. It just haunted me for 4 years.
But as far as court was concerned, you were what is called a willing victim. You were prepared to come to court and testify and do all the things, and you wanted the prosecution to take this as far as they needed to, whether or not he was going to plead guilty or go to trial, but you were looking for some real recognition from the system. Justice, as we use that term very, very loosely.
I assumed. He also, my ex also additionally got charged with 3 other for the historical abuse. So he added 3 assaults into that conversation. So it was 8 charges total.
Okay.
They were going to do an attempted murder charge,
yes,
but as well as I do how hard that is, and they just wanted to get him on something.
Okay.
So they broke it down.
Okay.
And I thought that was probably the best legal strategy. Victims have no control in the system of what actually happens. So even if we were pushing for that, I started talking to criminal defense lawyers. Robert Rodenberg, who is my lawyer, friend, whatever. And I started he was in my back pocket for whatever reason. And then I didn't commit a crime, but I had a criminal defense lawyer. I civilly pursued against my ex as well in October of that year and had those 2 cases going on. And so that was, I just assumed that this is so obvious. We will get him, he will go to jail, that will be his fate and he so deserves it, and that's fine, and I will go through this process. And then I heard about Jordan's Rule. It was January 2022. So that was 2021. We're now in January 2022. I'm in California reestablishing my life. The rebuild is insane. especially when you have PTSD, especially when you have anxiety, especially when you have the depression. The physical injuries took 6 months to finally like really heal up properly. The world was different. I did not understand life. I did not like life anymore. I didn't get it. I didn't know how to fit myself. I was not the same person. And my ex robbed joy. I didn't know how to be happy anymore because I was afraid to be happy because I assumed there would always be another shoe that would drop. And it was kind of like everything was gray. The world was gray, even though I lived in sunny California and, was on Rodeo or whatever. And I didn't like anything anymore. And I think that needs to be understood, that this really, it cost me so much too. Moving to the US, cost me like $60,000, $70,000, poof, in just 2 months, just gone. And lucky to be able to, I'm so lucky. I'm so lucky to be able to pull that trigger and just go.
Right.
I probably wouldn't be here if I hadn't left, because shit had started stalking me. And when he showed up, I was like, nope, we're done. Have to get out. Have to get out of this country. So
you're in California. Takes you 6 months to recover from the physical injuries. Then, of course, you're battling depression, PTSD, anxiety. At the same time as you're resettling in a new country, new city, trying to find your people there. In the background, I'm assuming the case is just going through the system as it does. Do you get regular updates or Crown attorneys reaching out to you being like, hey, just want to let you know what phase we're at in the litigation, want to let you know what's happening? Because as a defense lawyer, I have no part of that, right? Us on the defense side and outsiders to the system completely, I think have this belief that, the complainants, as they're called, are updated and you guys know what's going on. Because oftentimes when the defense floats, different procedural issues, or we put a position on the table for the Crowns to consider, they tell us that they need what's called victim input. So whenever there's a victim, they make it sound to us like they need to consult with people in your position before taking sort of the next step in the litigation. What does that look like on your side?
I've talked to, the charges were on 2 separate files. So there was a 3 historical assault and then the 5 for the July 31st attempted murder. And I've spoken to the Crown attorney on the July 31st incident once, and that was after the stay. I didn't even know what his name was.
And so nobody talked to you
Not
the whole
once.
way through the process. Okay. And so you've just mentioned the stay. For people who are listening, because there's people that listen in on this podcast that aren't a part of the system in any way, shape, or form, and then others who are a part in all of its different permutations. So I get messages from police officers, from Crowns, from other lawyers, from judges. There's a wealth of, a vast array of humans that listen to this podcast. But for those who don't know what a stay is, can you explain what that is in relation to your case and why that happened? Like, what happened?
I didn't know about Jordan's rule is what they call it. It's a charter right amendment. So it's not even technically like a criminal code amendment. It's a charter right amendment that happened in 2000.
Well, which is higher than the criminal code for us, right?
Yeah.
So
as Canadians,
yes.
So 2016, Trudeau and the God, don't get me started on that. Trudeau and the Supreme Court of Canada voted in a 5-4 vote that we would amend the charter rights. So Chapter 11, right to a speedy trial, and they added this section 11B, which is a timeline on that because courts were so backlogged, which they were. I 100% agree that they were completely backlogged and all of that, but they should not have put this timeline on it. So it's an 18, and I was discovering this through the news in January 2022. And I hadn't had a trial set yet. And Jordan's rule came into my sort of playbook, and I brought it up. I actually emailed, and I can pull up the email to the officer in charge, and I said, what about Jordan's rule? I said, it's an 18-month timeline for provincial summary charges and then a 30-month timeline for indictable offenses is more or less,
Sort of. So 11B is a section of the charter.
Yeah.
It predates Trudeau. It's actually been a part of the Canadian Constitution for a long
the
time.
right to a speedy,
Right. It's a right to a trial in a reasonable amount of time.
Yeah.
And of course, like everything in our legal system, what is reasonable depends on the judge. And so the Supreme Court of Canada, and as much as I hate Trudeau, we can't blame him for this. It was the Supreme Court of Canada that set the timelines in order to try to give some guidance to the court system, because things were getting, thrown out or not, and there was no real guidance. And so they set an 18-month ceiling for charges that proceed in lower court or the Ontario Court of Justice, and then a 30-month ceiling for matters that proceed into the Superior Court of Justice. And so it really just depended on the timeline. And so when you start learning about, these timelines or these general rules, the matter hadn't been set down for trial yet and was already bumping up against the 18-month ceiling.
Well, that July 2021 to January 2022,
Right.
like what's that, 6-7 months? You're already
That's what I'm saying.
18, and I didn't know. You don't know what you don't know. I don't have why would, and I actually would shout out to the listeners who are not involved in the criminal and justice system in any capacity who are listening, because I think the public needs to know what they could be facing. And this could happen to anybody, right? So I'm not special. This could literally occur anywhere. And
it happens all the time.
All the time. Obscene rates in this country right now. That's a whole other conversation. But so I was learning about Jordan's rule in January 2022, and then February 2022, I get a message saying, okay, trial is scheduled for February 2023.
Okay.
1 month past the 18. And I immediately emailed back to the officer in charge and I said, no. This needs to happen in January or earlier, because he's going to use Jordan's rule and get away with this. I told them how to do their job. And they said, no, not for something like this. We would never stay something like this. We would never even have the capacity to. This was horrible, blah, blah. You'll be fine. It's just COVID backlog, that would never occur. And so I naively and stupidly just said, okay, well, what am I going to do about this? So December 16th, 2022, I'm just having a nice normal day. I've been shooting this movie, whatever, down in Santa Monica. We're at the airport, this and this and that. Oh, this was a night shoot. Was going to go to work at 4 p.m. PST. We get a call at 1 p.m. PST from Victim Services. Sitting in my room, she goes, hey, so hope you're getting ready for the holidays and you're not going to have a trial because all of this timed out and we have to throw it away. So I hope you have a great Christmas and try not to think about it. Oh. Whew.
Oh, is this a voice message you get, or this is a live call?
This is a live person.
So someone was on the phone
telling me this. Like I could verbatim. I can't forget the language. And I said, excuse yourself. And I lost it. I lost my shit. I went absolutely. I said, it's on video. You can watch this with me right now. And she was just like, yeah, I don't, he's not in your life anymore. So I said, yeah. Completely.
And so the Crown attorneys never called? Like no one from the Crown's office called you?
No. I had to hunt them down. I didn't even know my Crown attorney's name at this point still. I had to hunt him, Mark Friedman, vile. I called the police station all that weekend. I called the division. I just said, what do you see on your end? Like, and they're like, we're seeing it's still going. This doesn't make sense because it hadn't updated in their system yet. It took Mark Friedman 5 days to get back to me. It wasn't until December 21st, that Wednesday. And I was up all night just shaking, being like, how could you? And he got on the phone and said, yeah, I have 200 cases, so I'm really busy.
Wow.
And I recorded every single conversation I've had with the Crown attorney since then. And he said, I'll put in an appeal, but I don't really know. It's kind of close to the holidays or whatever. I said, this is my life that was taken, and you are allowing someone who tried to take my life go free. He's like, yeah, but I don't make the laws. Worst Christmas of my life. I then immediately called Robert Rotenberg and I said, this is in and around when you and I first connected. And I called Robert and I said, I need you to babysit these Crown attorneys for me. And so my family paid him and retained him. And he babysat the remaining 3 charges with another Crown attorney, Corey Langdon, who I thought, okay, women's rights degree, female, we'll get something. And I had to figure out with everything that I had experienced how to completely comprehend that something that is on video, that is an attempt on someone's life, has no judicial bearing in this country. I still struggle with that because it was a break in my reality. It made me feel crazy. It so invalidated to the extent of the gaslighting of this government and this legislation and these Crown attorneys. It's as narcissistic as the abusers themselves. Oh. Right on point. I would have waited 25,000 years. I would have waited an eternity to go to trial with this son of a bitch. And I was robbed of my rights as a Canadian citizen, as my right as a human being to safety, liberty, freedom, judicial process.
Did you just want to be heard from the process? Like, I'm so curious because obviously I don't have these conversations with people who have been victimized, right? I cross-examine to suggest that what you're telling the police isn't true, right? That's my role in this system. And so sometimes I, wonder what it is that victims want at the end of the day. Is it to be heard? Is it for a judge to say, he's guilty so that that he's reprimanded? Ultimately, what is it that you were looking for the trial process? Because I've just done so many cases of extreme violence, both intimate and not, and nobody ever seems to feel like they got quote unquote justice. And so what were you looking for, and what did you feel like the stay of proceedings robbed you of ultimately?
Being a human being. Being alive. It was a second attempt on my life. What I wanted was him to be held accountable. I needed him to be held accountable, and I did not need to be believed because you will believe it because everybody can watch it.
Right.
So I didn't need, and that's a blessing that most survivors and victims don't have a lot of the times, is they don't have the evidence that I have.
Right. Most of these trials are credibility contests.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. And there's no credibility issue. Like, he was done. Right. If this went to trial, something would have stuck. There's no question about that. I wanted to protect his kid. And I wanted him to know that he was not going to be the all-powerful. I don't want anyone to suffer. I don't want him to suffer. He suffers.
Really?
He must suffer.
You don't want him to suffer? You can't say that. Come on.
He's already suffering in his own mind.
No, you can't. You can't say that.
I want to be safe.
Yes, but don't say you don't want him to suffer.
I don't get pleasure out of that.
Okay.
He's getting his. Yeah.
Right, because you want him to suffer in some form or fashion. He'll get his.
I wanted him to be removed from society and my world so that I could be safe. I wanted to be able to walk the streets of Toronto and not be looking over my shoulder more than I have to as a female to see if he's going to be there. I just wanted him out of that house. I wanted to preserve the memories with his child, to be able to at least have some reprieve in that and maybe take a breath. And that is what this system robbed me from, is that ability to be safe.
What happened with his second case?
Same deal.
The charges were stayed?
So, Corey Langdon, January 2023, have our first meeting. 3 charges. She goes, I'm going to proceed on indictment. I feel bad about what happened to you. I'm like, okay. While I'm hitting record and exercising my legal right to record people without their consent. You're giving me an eye right now.
No. You do you. This is recording, so I don't. I feel
it's
no
not
way.
Against the law.
Yeah.
So
no, fair.
I learned a lot about law very quickly. And so I started recording her conversations, and my lawyer was present for everyone. And Corey said, "Oh, I'm going to get him with this." Again, same deal with the evidence. It's voice notes. It's this. Like, she's like, "At least something. We'll get you something." And then, May 2003 rolls around. We have a 30-month timeline now, so we're trying to get a trial scheduled. And it was January 2024. So now we're at 4 years later. Get a call from her to have a Zoom. She goes, "So you're up against murder. And this is only assault. And it's just going to get timed out. So you should have a peace bond."
Meaning your case was up against murder cases?
So
and
it was
wasn't
never going to get
serious
fit in.
enough.
It wasn't serious enough. It didn't have enough value, even though it was an attempted murder in a different context. And she goes, "Yeah, so for these 3 charges, you're going to get a peace bond. And we can do that in March." And I said, "No, we are not doing that. That is not what I want. We are going to trial." And she said, "Yeah, but I'm not." I said, "But I am." "So what do you want to do?" And then verbatim said, "When he kills someone, the blood is on your hands, and I need to absolve myself of responsibility of letting someone like him go free. And we are now going to do this my way, not your way. And I will have a news camera there when we walk out of court on that date in March." And she said, "Well," and I said, "Oh, by the way, I've been recording you for the last year, and I have everything that you said and all of the lies that you said that led us up to this moment." She said, "I didn't consent to that." I'm like, "It's my legal right. So try me." And the destruction that this system left me with. Furthermore, I was then told for this peace bond on March 26, 2024, that I was only going to be allowed to talk about the historical abuse, not July 31st, because those are what the charges were. So I couldn't bring up the attempt on my life, but the 3 times prior that he was up for. And I told him, "Fuck off." And she's like, "Well, you might get cross-examined." And I said, "Don't threaten me with a good time." Like, literally told. I was done. Just done. She's like, but I said, "There is no world that exists where I am getting up in front of him in court and not being honest 100% of the time, every single step of the way. That world does not exist. So if they want to interject and his lawyers want to get all pissed, then bring it on." And you know who his lawyer was.
So they gave you the opportunity for victim impact statement at the peace bond hearing? See, that doesn't even generally happen. So normally at a peace bond hearing, we don't hear from the complainant.
But the lack of humanity, the entire process is what,
Yes.
I couldn't imagine being a judge and letting that go.
Yeah.
It's so disconnected from a good human experience. And then I had my friends at City News right outside, and here we are.
And so was born Cait Alexander, the advocate.
I didn't expect to have.
Did you start the process of trying to change the laws, trying to advance a different way to deal with domestic violence before the peace bond gets entered?
No.
Or did that take shape through that process?
The last day when I knew that was gonna, because it was the threat of Jordan again.
Okay.
I remember just screaming when I called my mom and I said, "I am suing the government.
Yes.
I am done doing it this way. This is obscene at a level
and
that
you are suing the government,
yes,
you're not?
Yes, I am.
Which is phenomenal. I don't know that there's ever been a lawsuit.
There
like
hasn't,
that
because
before.
you know how many lawyers it took? I had to.
I know.
Yeah.
I know.
20, 30
I know.
calls.
I canvassed a few in my network for you, and everyone was like, "Absolutely not. They're not taking this
And
on."
Catherine Marshall is the only one with
Yes.
the gusto.
Yes.
And the team and the energy we have a major press conference for it tomorrow morning outside of Queen's Park, actually.
Yes, I saw the
yeah.
flyer for it. And so that's how Eve, or End Violence Everywhere, is born.
Yeah.
what is your mandate with Eve? What are you trying to accomplish? And just so that, listeners can understand the scope of Eve, because you're huge now. Like, what you have accomplished in this organization is unbelievable. But, tell us, like, how many other women are you helping, and what are you trying to accomplish, and what have you been doing? Because I think it's really what has started off as, I guess, a passion project has really grown into a political. It is. Has
yes,
really grown into a
passion
political.
being the rage side of passion. Okay,
Sure,
yeah.
this
is my anger alchemized
yes.
into a lot of love and passion. The red,
Yes.
the color red.
Well,
passion.
you don't want to see him suffer. Apparently, I don't know. If that was me, I would want him to suffer. But
I couldn't physically do that myself. But he's already suffering mentally. There's no. His suffering is a public lashing. I have to really thank the media and people such as yourself and being believed by the community. I mean, I have a lot of evidence, yes, but the public support has been astronomical. That is my justice. That is him suffering because that's what he really didn't want.
Right.
He really didn't want people to know.
Right.
And so he is suffering because people know now.
Oh, yeah. You have been one of the most outspoken. You've owned your story in ways that we don't often see. From a perspective of wanting to educate the public and push for change in ways that we don't often see.
I promised Corey Langdon, the Crown Attorney, I promised her that we would be doing this because I also, coming from the career that I have had abilities to mobilize it. And Kristen Wong-Tam, the MPP Toronto Centre, they were one of the first politicians to bring me in, and former Speaker of the House, Ted Arnott, who was my MPP for like 30 years, conservative, awesome dude. Both of them brought me into the Ontario legislature and were like, are you sure that you want to take your career in this direction? And I said, I can't. About a month, 6 weeks after my attempted murder, back in 2021, I did a magazine spread, a holiday editorial in Montreal for Canadian Living magazine with holes in my skull. And my feet could barely fit into the shoes because they were still so swollen from my physical injuries. What a lie. Here I am promoting this image of femininity, sexuality, selling things, a model. But I just went through the worst experience of my entire life, and now I'm expected to go and just be beautiful. I hated that. I hated feeling like I had a secret. And so this has actually been so healing for me, going public and being heard and understood, because I don't have to carry that. It's an abolition of shame, dissolves the shame in thin air. And I didn't really carry a lot of shame because my mother validated me so much. And so I didn't have that shame from in the internal family structure. So I think I never felt responsible for what he did to me, which is also very rare. My mom ensured that I didn't experience that, and she didn't even intend on it. But when I saw all of my things after we had taken the police escorts in August 2021, and we had restacked all of the boxes and all my shit in my parents' garage, and I just dropped to the ground. I said, where's my life? And my mom picked me up from behind and she goes, none of this is your fault.
Wow.
And so I think, and I can even felt it in saying that in that moment, I never had to carry the weight of that. And I wish everyone got to be cared for that way.
But that's what you're trying to provide for people.
That's what we're trying.
Right?
So Eve is everything that I didn't have, that I want survivors to have through this system.
And everything you did have that a lot don't.
Yeah.
Right? A lot of
drawing on the good
don't.
things, the resources, the ability, the legal access. Catherine helping us out with. She's not charging us for this.
Right.
This lawsuit against the federal government. So
you're suing him.
I've
civilly.
Settled.
Okay, so he settled. So he settled your civil lawsuit, but you had a civil lawsuit against him, and separate and apart from that, you're suing the federal government for the results of each of your court cases?
Yes, myself and 22 other plaintiffs the premise is Jordan.
Okay.
And the stay of it's not technically a class action, but it's in that same sort of vein, and it's a charter lawsuit issue. And
So 22 other women have come forward in similar
20 we have
situation?
myself and 21 other men, fathers of daughters, like other different contexts, right?
Okay.
But all about Jordan.
And all sort of victims of violence but domestic violence?
Sexual and domestic.
And domestic, whose charges were stayed as a result of
Yeah.
breach of the Jordan timelines.
Yeah, or threat of Jordan even.
Wow.
Because Jordan's been weaponized to get survivors to pull their stories. So we've launched that.
And weaponized by who? When you say it's been weaponized?
By the Crowns.
Wow.
The Crowns, I've seen it dozens of times where the Crown attorneys will say, well, you're going to get Jordaned out, so you better accept this.
And what do they want you to accept?
They want you to accept a peace bond.
Okay.
They want you to let him go free.
And what happens if you say no?
They do it anyways.
So from the defense side, just so that you're aware.
I know. I got to see your
we
wheels
often,
going.
yes, because the number of times where I have said to a Crown attorney, like, listen, let's just peace bond this. And the response I get is, I need victim input. And so I always take that to mean, okay, you need to go and speak to the alleged victim, and that person needs to sign off in order for us to complete this matter by way of a peace bond. And that's regardless of whether or not Jordan is an issue, because my personal backlog on my cases is so significant that I almost never am in a position to bring Jordan applications, right? And I tell my clients I have, it's called an 11B waiver. I have it built into my retainer agreements because of my schedule, and I know that. And so I let, all prospective clients know that the delays on my end on scheduling trials will often interfere with their ability to have a trial in what's considered to be a reasonable amount of time. And so I let most clients know that. And so it's usually not a concern for the cases that I'm defending. And I still have Crown attorneys tell me they need victim input before they can even entertain certain resolutions. So I'm surprised, and I guess the look on my face is one of shock that you're seeing that, it doesn't really matter what that victim input is. So when the 22 people that are a part of this lawsuit said, I don't care about Jordan, I don't care about anything, I'm not agreeing to a peace bond, it's happened irregardless.
Yeah.
Wow.
Constant, and the constant threat of it. And I think it's so individual, right? It's so situational, and it depends on the Crown, but it happened twice in my own experience. And we see it and hear it every single day. Just this absolute want to make you scream and rip your hair out frustration with the victim side of the criminal injustice process. And it's killing us. The scary part is I know, again, dozens of women that should be alive because we have not had a judicial process that is adequate in any capacity.
Has there been any change politically that you've seen now that we have Mark Carney in charge as opposed to Justin Trudeau?
No,
because
it's the same people. I wish for both of our sake, because we've discussed this, I wish that the Conservatives had gotten in, because I know them personally, and I was so lambasted by so many women and people being like, how can you be a women's right? You're not a women's rights advocate if you vote Conservative. Like, you don't know these people. You don't know. I know them. I know them now. I talk to them. I know what they're all about. And for both of our sake, being on opposite sides of the fence, if you will, I think it would have been better to have a different government in, because I think the incompetency of Sean Fraser is something we all have already experienced in other files.
Yes.
So call me Sean again. Tell me it's not the Wild West. Tell me to my face. So I mean, but that's the downside of the media is it can be weaponized in the ways that it has been to push people to vote in a certain way without actually really understanding the context. And I have to give Pierre and the rest of the Conservative MPs so much credit. I mean, I emailed in April 2024. I sent the exact same email to Jagmeet, Justin, and to Pierre. Pierre responded. His office responded in 48 hours. Jagmeet's took 7 months. No, Justin's took 7 months, and Jagmeet's never did.
You know, we've talked about this quote, the system is broken. The system is broken. And I used to say it all the time when I first got into the justice system. And so I was having this, oh my God, the system is broken. And I just need to do my part and fix it. You know, I really believe that. I thought that people didn't know, you know, a lot of the root causes of violence and addiction. And if we could just address that and have meaningful conversations and we can make change and we can fix it. And I don't think we can. I think that the system needs a complete overhaul. It is already beyond exploding. I think it's imploding, quite frankly. I think it's collapsing into itself from every single angle. No one's happy. I speak to players from all walks of the system and every ranking, and everyone says the same thing. We're in a really, really frightening time because nothing is working for anyone. No one in the system is happy. My clients don't feel like they're being heard. My clients don't feel a sense of justice. Victims don't feel a sense of justice. Crown attorneys say that they are like stretched beyond their capacity. So are defense lawyers. Judges are seeing it obviously from their vantage point. They're not happy with what's going on in the system. Like, I just don't know. And people that we want to fix it are arguing like children over who's right and who's wrong.
The
and
only
who
people that
speaks
have the
first.
power to fix it.
Correct.
And I am at a point, and I this is probably very clear. I don't care because I know that you and I are standing, even though technically on opposite sides of the fence, on the right side of history, because we want this thing to function for everyone who has to engage in this system. And I wish we didn't. You know, do you wish you could be a criminal defense lawyer? Like, do you wish that you didn't have to be? Like,
Oh no, there's no other type of lawyer I would be.
But I mean,
what I would do.
I wish that I didn't have to have Eve.
I'm sure,
You know what I mean? Like, I wish that I didn't have to found a charity to support people because it's so bad. I wish that it was good enough that you and I could be like, yeah, it's great. And everyone's, you know, we're protecting community safety. I also want to rehabilitate the criminals that can be rehabilitated, because I think a lot of them are survivors themselves. I'm not naive to that. My empathy is high. But the system is so broken that we are where we're at, and it's going to take a lot of empathy from both sides to fix it, and we need to have that for each other. We need to be able to have these types of conversations. But I love all of the amazing survivors that we get to serve, and I have the best team ever and the best board, and you know, there's so much community support. But I was like, I wish I didn't have to do this. You know, why I could do other things. I wish it wasn't. It seems like it's so simple to fix. It seems like these things are so obvious,
right?
And we just don't do them.
Agreed.
And it makes me mentally, like, it makes smoke just spew out of my ears, because it's like, what are we doing? Why are we doing it this way? It's a colossal waste of money, energy, life, and resources, and humanity. And we could be doing much more constructive things.
And we could be spending taxpayers' dollars in far better ways.
Oh my God.
Like addressing the root causes of violence that everyone in the system has been talking about for decades. And no one wants to listen to. For our listeners who want to reach out and support Eve, to support you, to support what you do, who perhaps, you know, either have some skin in the game that they want to take advantage of all of the incredible services that Eve provides, or those who don't and want to learn more, how do they find Eve? How do they find you? How do people connect with you, Cait?
Pretty easy. I respond to everyone. That's something that I mandated for myself when I went public, because the first time, March 26th, when it got circulated, there was thousands. But I do my best, and I have a team now, but I do my best. I get back to everyone. as quickly as humanly possible. So please find us at www.endviolenceeverywhere.org. The Canadian and the American website are both on there. And then I can be found simply on the Instagrams and the TikToks and the other things of the world at CAIT, Cait Alexander. And End Violence Everywhere is on my pages there. And I just reach out. It's
And what's the handle for End Violence Everywhere?
at Eve_initiative.
Perfect.
Yeah. So.
All right. Anyone looking for more information, anyone looking to support Cait, incredible journey, obviously a horrific, traumatic experience that you are now owning and using to advocate for other women and pushing for change in a way that's truly, truly phenomenal. I can't say that enough. It's been a pleasure.
I appreciate. We also support men too. Has to be said. We've supported about 3 different men who have gone through IPV situations, and the door's open for everyone. Right? This is a non-discriminatory issue. It predominantly affects women and children, but we proudly serve men, and we want men to be a part of this conversation. So I really appreciate you so much.
I appreciate you. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for coming on the show. Thank you for your honesty and giving all of us a pause to consider all of the issues that you have raised and will continue raising and shining that light on. So thank you.
Thank you, darling.